On an ordinary Wednesday morning, Michael ZCK was absorbed in the mundane task of washing his car. As the soapy water cascaded down the vehicle's sleek exterior, his attention was caught by a startling sight. A white crossover screeched to a halt outside his modest house, its tires squealing against the quiet suburban backdrop. Michael wiped his hands on his jeans. Curiosity piqued as he observed the scene unfolding before him. In the front seats of the Kia Sportage sat a couple, their presence starkly contrasting. The man, calm and composed, seemed at odds with the woman beside him, who was visibly shaken, her body language screaming of fear. As Michael approached the vehicle, hoping perhaps to offer assistance, his senses were assaulted by a sudden, deafening explosion. The car burst into flames, an inferno rapidly consuming it, illuminating the street with its fierce blaze. The morning tranquility was shattered, replaced by the chaos of emergency sirens and the panicked cries of onlookers. The fire was relentless. Inside the car, the woman was engulfed in flames, her screams piercing through the chaos. Michael, acting on instinct, seized a nearby hose and charged towards the fire. With determination etched on his face, he battled the relentless inferno, aiming the powerful spray at the flames that threatened to consume the woman entirely. Onlookers gathered, horror-stricken, as the tragedy unfolded. Neighbors peeked from behind curtains, their faces etched with shock and sorrow. "It's just sad, really horrible," one whispered, echoing the sentiments of many. This street, usually quiet and uneventful, had become the stage for a devastating drama. Meanwhile, investigators swarmed the scene, trying to piece together the events that led to such a catastrophic outcome. The woman, now identified as Hannah Clark, was a figure of strength and beauty, her life tragically cut short by the actions of her husband, a man described by many as misogynistic and cowardly. Hannah and her husband, Rowan Baxter, were both fitness trainers and business partners. They appeared to have it all, a thriving business and a beautiful family, until their marriage began to crumble. On the fateful day of the tragedy, they were following their routine, having just left the gym, and were about to grab some coffee when their morning took a tragic turn. For months prior to this incident, on a seemingly routine traffic stop, the couple was pulled over by Officer Kate from Capillaro Policing. The vehicle's registration had been canceled, a fact that seemed to unsettle Rowan significantly. As the officer questioned him, Rowan's frustration was palpable, his demeanor confrontational. Hannah, born in Brisbane on September 8, 1988, was known for her vibrant and compassionate nature. Her infectious smile and nurturing demeanor made her a beloved figure in her community. She met Rowan, 11 years her senior and a former professional rugby player, in a boxing class. Despite some initial reservations from her family due to Rowan's past and present circumstances, his charm eventually won them over. However, beneath the surface of their seemingly perfect life, tensions were simmering. Rowan's confrontational demeanor and frequent use of steroids had caused rifts in their professional lives, leading to a steady decline in his client base. Despite these challenges, Hannah remained committed to Rowan, even as his behavior grew increasingly erratic and controlling. Their story, marked by love and turmoil, was one of contrasts. On one hand, there was Hannah's relentless positivity and dedication to her family and career. On the other, there was Rowan's struggle with insecurity and control, elements that ultimately led to tragic consequences. As Michael continued to fight the blaze, his efforts underscored the community's shock and the profound impact of the tragedy on all who witnessed it. The question on everyone's mind was clear. How could something like this happen here? The quiet street, once a place of safety and normalcy, was now marked by the scars of that devastating day. Hannah's flourishing career in the fitness industry, coupled with her vibrant personality, likely exacerbated Rowan's underlying insecurities. Despite the dynamic between them growing increasingly strained, the couple embarked on a joint venture in 2015. With financial backing from Hannah's parents and another investor, they opened a gym together. "I'm Hannah, and whether you're just getting started or you already have some experience, we would love to hear more about how we can help you improve your health and fitness journey," Hannah would warmly invite potential clients. Alongside their personal training commitments, both Hannah and Rowan worked at a sports shoe retailer. Rowan's behavior at the store mirrored his previous workplace conduct, where he exhibited disrespect towards female colleagues and customers. His need for control over Hannah was palpable. He always seemed to be one step ahead, knowing conversations she had that he wasn't part of. "Maybe us or another person," Rowan would prompt, revealing his surreptitious monitoring of her communications. This oppressive behavior extended to their personal training sessions, where Rowan displayed a consistent pattern of belittling and undermining female clients. A particularly disturbing incident occurred during a session with Hannah's mother, Sue. Rowan callously dropped her during training and, rather than showing concern or offering help, he mocked her. Despite such troubling behavior, Hannah's parents attempted to accept Rowan for the sake of their daughter's happiness. However, they observed a rapid decline in his demeanor and attitude, particularly after the birth of their children. Despite Hannah's parents' financial investment in their business, Rowan's disrespectful conduct towards customers persisted, worsening over time. His disapproving remarks towards clients, coupled with worsening behavior on the domestic front, painted a troubling picture of his character. Coming back to the traffic stop, Rowan was informed that this wasn't the first time the car's registration was overdue. It was, in fact, a second offense. "Would you be the same one that she did, yeah? So, in regards to that, because this is your second type of offense, we actually have to remove the number plates and actually immobilize your vehicle for 7 days, the officer explained. He continued, outlining the consequences of further offenses, which included vehicle immobilization for longer periods and eventual impoundment. Hannah and Rowan's marriage was incredibly troubled, marked by various forms of abuse: physical, sexual, emotional, and financial. The abuse was predominantly emotional and financial, which made it harder to recognize, even for the victim. Emotional and financial abuse are just as harmful as physical abuse but are harder to identify because they are less visible. The extent of domestic violence in Australia is shocking. On average, 1 woman a week is killed by a current or former partner. Rowan's controlling behavior gradually became evident to those around Hannah. He exhibited road rage, jealousy towards her relationships, and even controlled what she wore. Hannah wasn't allowed to wear shorts apparently because shorts are for children, and he prohibited her from wearing pink, claiming it attracted too much unwanted attention. He cloaked his unhealthy possessiveness behind the veil of protection, but little did Hannah know, her so-called protector would be the one destroying her life forever. Rowan went to extremes, recording Hannah's conversations, interrogating her about her interactions, and involving their children in his manipulation tactics. He deliberately isolated Hannah from her friends and family, causing a significant strain on her relationship with her brother so much so that Nat almost didn't invite Hannah to his wedding. He further exerted control by forcing Hannah to delete her personal Facebook page and creating a joint account controlled by him under the guise of it being for their family and business, all to isolate Hannah further and maintain control over her life. "Have you got a smartphone?" "Yep." "Grab it, and I'll show you that you can download." The officer guided Hannah on how to manage her vehicle's registration more effectively using an app. Despite the ongoing situation, Hannah maintained her composure, politely engaging with the officer and taking responsibility for managing the household finances. This contrasted sharply with Rowan's dismissive behavior towards the situation. Hannah's demeanor changed when she got back in close proximity to her toxic husband. It wasn't because of the situation or the officer's presence. It was her own husband creating that effect. Now, because of her, Rowan wouldn't get his fix of coffee on time. She half-heartedly tried to ask for a quick detour at a coffee shop, but they were only allowed to drive the car back home and not move it for 7 days. One can only imagine the mental trauma she had to endure after the officer left. Rowan was not only mentally torturing her, he was also sexually abusive. Hannah Clark's life was marred by the tyranny of her estranged husband, Rowan Baxter. He exerted control over her in every aspect, forcing her to sleep with him every night and satisfy his perverted tendencies. If Hannah refused intimacy, Rowan would make her life miserable. In one instance, he threw her watch across the room in frustration when he noticed she wasn't enjoying herself in bed with him. Rowan's manipulation extended to their children as well. He wouldn't physically harm them, but he would use tactics like throwing away their toys or preventing them from visiting Hannah's mother, knowing it would upset her. The children were aware of this dynamic and understood that if they upset their father, they would be denied visits to their grandmother. It's disturbing that young children had to navigate such emotional manipulation. A concerning fact about Rowan Baxter is that he had a history of abuse in his previous relationship. His first wife attempted to leave him several times before finally succeeding. Rowan even confided in a friend about thoughts of murdering his first wife, claiming he had prepared to kill her. Hannah later informed the police that Rowan had confessed to threatening his ex-wife, using it as another method of manipulation. The gym, which Hannah and Rowan co-owned, struggled financially, with debts of over $75,000 by late 2019, leading to its shutdown. This occurred before Hannah and Rowan separated in 2001 SSI. Hannah and Rowan's separation was tumultuous, as expected. The extreme caution Hannah had to exercise in leaving Rowan speaks volumes about his tyranny and control. It was a painstaking process orchestrated with meticulous care. Hannah's friends played a pivotal role in her escape plan. One day, while Baxter was at work, they quickly picked up the kids from school, packed a few essential belongings into 2 garbage bags, and whisked them away to Hannah's parents' house. The meager possessions they brought were a testament to their urgent need to flee the toxic environment they had endured for far too long. Hannah's mother, Sue, vividly remembered the sense of relief that washed over Hannah upon arriving at her parents' home. However, amidst the relief, there lingered an ominous dread. In a haunting moment, Hannah confided in her mother, "Who gets the children when he kills me, Mom?" It was a chilling statement that underscored Hannah's profound fear and the gravity of her situation. After their escape, Hannah's mother urged her to seek help from the police, and she eventually obtained a domestic violence restraining order against Rowan. The major point of contention in their separation was custody of their children. Initially, Hannah proposed an arrangement where Baxter would have 165 days of custody each year, alternating between 3 and 4 days per week. However, Baxter refused to agree to this arrangement against his lawyer's advice. He insisted on a perfectly split 50-50 custody, which was essentially similar to Hannah's proposal. It was clear that Baxter's refusal was more about control than practicality, making the situation difficult for Hannah. Rowan's behavior with the children became increasingly concerning after their separation in November 2019. Hannah returned from the gym to discover that Rowan had taken the children and turned off his phone, preventing her from reaching them. Thankfully, the children returned unharmed, but it was clear Rowan was exerting control. On a weekend before Christmas of the same year, Rowan took all 3 kids out for 4 hours, but then refused to return them despite Hannah's plans to visit their great-grandmother. This disregard for their agreed-upon schedule only added to the tension. He was supposed to return the kids by 4 p.m., but didn't show up until 8 p.m. It's unimaginable how terrifying these situations must have been for Hannah, fearing for her children's safety. The children themselves were also scared. Aaliyah, the oldest, called Hannah in tears while with her father, expressing how scared she was as they drove on an unknown highway. The next day, she got help from another mom to call Hannah and reassure her of their safety. It's heartbreaking that such young children had to experience such fear and uncertainty. Aaliyah, the oldest child, was intelligent and fully aware of the situation. She was incredibly articulate, reading ahead of her years, and enjoyed telling stories to her younger siblings. Not only that, but she had also taken after her mother when it came to physical fitness. Rowan prevented Aaliyah from contacting her mom or grandmother when she was with him. Every morning, Sue had to reassure Aaliyah that she wouldn't see her father that day because she was so terrified. It's incredibly heartbreaking and disturbing that a 6-year-old would endure such mental anguish. On December 26, 2019, on Boxing Day, Rowan Baxter committed the unthinkable act of kidnapping Lyanna. Hannah had planned to meet with him so the kids could play with their Christmas skateboards. With her hands full, Baxter took advantage of the situation and took little Lyanna, the middle child, and just took off with her in Hannah's car, which was registered in her name. He refused to return Lyanna and instead demanded that Hannah bring the other 2 children back to him. He kept Lyanna away for 4 days, leaving Hannah worried and desperate for answers. The unsettling kidnapping was witnessed by a doctor who felt compelled to alert the authorities. She commented that Rowan was in such a hurry that he neglected to secure a seatbelt for the 4-year-old. A caring parent wouldn't behave in such a manner. Detective Sergeant Dirk Harris, who conducted a thorough examination of the family's case following the abduction, characterized Rowan Baxter as a narcissist. Giving a statement, he said, "He committed reprehensible and inappropriate acts driven by his primary intent to inflict harm upon Hannah." Hannah's fears were tragically realized on February 19, 2020, when Rowan Baxter perpetrated an unspeakable act of violence. He ambushed Hannah and their children, Aaliyah, Lyanna, and Trey, as they were leaving a family daycare center. Rowan set the family's car ablaze, killing himself and their 3 children. Hannah, who was also in the car, managed to escape but suffered severe burns. The tragedy sent shockwaves through the community, and it soon became clear that Rowan's history of abuse and manipulation had led to this devastating outcome. The investigation revealed that Rowan had planned the attack meticulously, using his knowledge of the family's routines to orchestrate the ambush. His intention was to inflict maximum harm on Hannah and their children, a chilling testament to his narcissistic personality and desire for control. In the aftermath of the tragedy, Hannah's family and friends remembered her as a vibrant and caring person who had been trapped in a toxic relationship. Her mother, Sue, recalled how Hannah had confided in her about Rowan's abuse and manipulation and how she had feared for her life. The tragedy served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the need for greater support and resources for those affected by it. Despite the alarming kidnapping incident, the police seemed indifferent, perhaps thinking it was just a father's right. However, Hannah took action and filed a domestic violence restraining order against Rowan, temporarily preventing him from seeing their children. Shockingly, in January 2020, the restraining order was lifted, giving Rowan full access to the children again. The justice system's decision to set aside the restraining order highlights its flaws. Even in countries like Australia, legal processes sometimes fail to protect victims, leaving them vulnerable to further harm. After the kidnapping, the couple tried mediation to establish a custody agreement, but Rowan refused to sign a legally binding consent order, opting for a non-binding parenting agreement, likely seeking more control. In February 2020, a physical assault occurred when Hannah, living with her parents, went outside to retrieve the children from Rowan, who had just arrived. Sue, Hannah's mother, witnessed Rowan grabbing Hannah's wrist as she retrieved some papers from his car. These papers turned out to be compromising photos of Hannah, intended to discredit her in a domestic violence hearing. Rowan strategically placed the photos around his car, visible to the children. When Hannah tried to remove them, Rowan responded with extreme force, causing her to suffer a sprained wrist and a busted lip. The situation might have escalated further if Hannah's mother hadn't witnessed the incident and rushed to her daughter's help. This incident was promptly reported to the police, constituting a clear breach of the protection order. Hannah considered pressing charges against Rowan, but decided not to. As a result of the assault, the parenting agreement he had signed was revoked, and he was denied access to his children. Following the assault, the police initially gave Rowan 48 hours to turn himself in, but 10 days passed without him being in custody. When he was finally arrested, his charges were downgraded, and he was not held in custody. If he had been arrested, Rowan Baxter wouldn't have gone on to commit the unimaginable atrocity in mid-February 2020. Hannah expressed her fear for her life to her mother and requested to create a will, genuinely concerned that her estranged husband might harm her. On the night of February 18th, Hannah and the children had a phone conversation with Rowan, during which he purportedly cried, manipulating their emotions. The police issued a domestic violence order against him, which he breached within weeks. The night before he murdered his wife and 3 children, Rowan Baxter called them. Despite the abuse, Hannah felt sympathy for him, a common tactic used by abusers to maintain control. Investigations later revealed alarming details leading up to February 18th. CCTV footage captured Rowan purchasing zip ties, cleaning fluid, and a fuel can. It was no snap decision. Rowan Baxter planned to hurt those he claimed to love. 2 days before he killed his family, the 42-year-old was seen wandering the aisles of a hardware store, first looking at mower fuel but ultimately deciding on buying a jerry can. Interestingly, he also bought 3 Kinder Surprise chocolates. The next day, he reached out to a men's helpline, but his intentions were far from seeking genuine assistance. Rowan inquired about behavioral change programs, his interest appearing solely self-serving and aimed at bolstering his position in court. On the morning of February 19th, Rowan spent an hour at a cafe, mentioning to the barista that he had been arguing with his ex-wife and was looking at maps on his phone. He was familiar with the area and was possibly planning his exit. These details underscored the premeditated nature of his actions. 16 hours later, he drove to Camp Hill, stopping at a fuel station on the way, before ambushing Hannah and his children inside their car. On that fateful morning, Hannah was preparing to take her children to school when Rowan parked across the street and observed them as she loaded the kids into the car. Rowan casually approached with a fuel can in hand, suddenly ambushing them, wielding a knife, and ordering Hannah to drive. At first, she resisted, but Rowan was barking at the top of his lungs, demanding her to drive away. Terrified, she complied. Once inside the car, Rowan pulled out the gas can and doused the interior, Hannah, and the children with gasoline. Shockingly, he had no gasoline on himself, indicating he didn't intend to die in the ensuing events. Probably in the heat of things, he accidentally splashed some on himself too. With Rowan directing her, Hannah drove. Then, she saw a man washing his car on the next street and attempted to signal for help. Michael ZCK was washing his car outside his home when he noticed a white Kia Sportage screeching to a halt outside. What he witnessed next will forever be etched in Michael's memory. A woman's frantic cry pierced the air, urging someone to call the police, claiming, "He's trying to kill me. He poured petrol on me." Michael, the witness, immediately called the police emergency number, and as he waited for help to arrive, he tried to reassure Hannah and the children, who were screaming in terror. Tragically, despite Michael's efforts, Rowan Baxter's sinister plan unfolded. He set the car ablaze, engulfing Hannah and their 3 children, Aaliyah, Lyanna, and Trey, in flames. The horrific scene was witnessed by Michael and other bystanders, who were powerless to stop the tragedy. The police and emergency services arrived shortly after, but it was too late. The car was consumed by fire, and the family of 4 perished in the inferno. Rowan Baxter, the perpetrator of this heinous crime, died shortly after, his body found nearby with severe burns. The community was left in shock and grief, struggling to comprehend the magnitude of this senseless act of violence. The investigation that followed revealed a history of domestic abuse and control, painting a chilling picture of a man who had meticulously planned and executed this atrocity. Hannah's family and friends remembered her as a vibrant and caring person who had been trapped in a toxic relationship. Her mother, Sue, recalled how Hannah had confided in her about Rowan's abuse and manipulation and how she had feared for her life. The tragedy served as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the need for greater support and resources for those affected by it. Michael, a bystander, tried to help but was blown away by the force of the blast. Despite being fully engulfed in flames, Hannah managed to escape the burning car, but her children were trapped inside. Michael and an off-duty paramedic tried to rescue them, but the intense heat and raging fire made it impossible. Hannah was rescued but suffered severe burns, covering 97% of her body. Despite her excruciating pain, her primary concern was the well-being of her children. She provided crucial information to the authorities, detailing Rowan's actions before the fire engulfed them. Rowan emerged from the vehicle, badly burned and disoriented, but instead of helping his children, he ran back into the burning car, retrieved a knife, and prevented bystanders from extinguishing the fire. He later attempted to take his own life by plunging the knife into his chest twice. Despite the heroic efforts of the off-duty paramedic and bystanders, Rowan succumbed to his self-inflicted injuries. The toxicology report revealed that he had no traces of drugs or alcohol in his system, indicating he was completely sober and conscious of his actions. Hannah, despite her severe burns, managed to provide 3 separate statements to the police, naming Rowan as her ex-husband and identifying him as the perpetrator. She also told them about the protection order against him and how he had doused the car's interior with petrol before igniting it. Tragically, Hannah succumbed to her injuries later that day, along with her 3 young children, Aaliyah, 6, Lyanna, 4, and Trey, 3. The investigation revealed that Rowan had planned to kidnap and murder Hannah before fleeing with the children, but her desperate plea for help altered his plans, leading to the heinous act of setting the car ablaze. In her legacy, the Small Steps for Hannah Foundation was established to combat domestic violence in Australia, aiming to halt incidents like this from happening again. By sharing Hannah's story, they hope to inspire others to recognize their worth and stand up against abuse in all its forms. The coroner's investigation concluded that Rowan was a master manipulator who entrapped Hannah and her children, and it was unlikely that anyone could have stopped him once he got into the car. The tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the devastating consequences of domestic violence and the need for greater support and resources for those affected by it.